Oh my gosh. Now if Taco's really listening to this episode, he's going to be sick remembering that, or like me bringing this up, because he was so sick.
Well, shit, what's going on, brother?
Man, we spent so much dang time not only thinking about this project, but also fine-tuning it, adding these types of episodes. And then yesterday we finally released our first episode that we've been sitting on for a few months now. And It's just a relief, but it's also kind of scary because now there's expectations and you have to drop something every week. And at the bottom line is I'm excited about it. So I think the conversations are super effective and we're making a difference. And those are my favorite. Like, these episodes are great. They're obviously a little bit more technical, but those episodes are like fun and entertaining,
Right. Nah, man, shout out to, everybody who supported us since launch. I mean, the reception has been amazing from this. But yeah, super excited, a little nervous excitement, because now we got to keep this thing going, which I'm not worried about. But yeah, bro, I'm excited as hell, man.
Yeah. So do you want to kick us off and, set the table a little bit for what we're about to discuss in this episode?
Yeah, for sure. So these recap breakdown episodes are more schematic type episodes. So it's not as fun and as vibrant as the other episodes. It's really us just talking about the topics discussed on the actual episode and really getting into more detail from a business standpoint and a nuanced standpoint of those topics. And that's whether we're talking to entrepreneurs or athletes. These episodes, really aren't for everybody. It's really for athletes who want to know the real process of launching something or investing in something.
More than an athlete.
Yeah, more than athlete. I mean, anybody. Yeah. The steps are going to be, applicable. Oh shoot, I messed that up. Anyone can do it. So yeah, man, I'm super excited for these because this is really what me and you do on a daily basis. We're not interviewers, we're not media people. We're in the trenches. Really helping the athlete build what their business and businesses are. So these episodes are really kind of a dive into our mind, into our processes, with how we're, doing things in our day to day. And it's super educational, super informative.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like, obviously we'll post these on YouTube as well, but it's almost better to like consume this type of content like on the go, audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, Amazon. Like this is like, to supercharge that commute and consume some value content. But we'll post it on YouTube just so that we're there and it's easy for everyone to find. But yeah, try us out on Spotify, follow WARMUPS there. If you're not already on our social media, follow us there too. We post the bite-size value nuggets and fun stuff from episode to episode. So
yeah, and also for those who didn't catch the preface episode or do not know me and Alex personally, our hustles are in the same world, our day-to-day hustles in the sports business athlete support world, but two different lanes. Alex is more so helping athletes build businesses, bringing ideas to life, the execution and the strategy behind a project, and me more so on helping athletes invest in things they're passionate about, whether that be real estate, the startup world, private equity, all types of things. So we're really going to be able to provide interesting and unique perspectives from both of those different worlds into these recap and breakdown episodes.
Yeah, cool.
So let's jump into it. So this episode was with Taco Charlton, professional athlete and fashion designer. But first, let's shout out Chad, who was the business expert, fashion expert on this episode.
Yeah, having him was super dope. We got to know him shortly before and after, so he's a homie for life now. Upgraded from acquaintances to homies. Shouts to him.
Nah, Chad was super dope. But yeah, let's jump into the fashion conversation. And I feel like we should start with a dope point that Taco made during the episode very early on. Merch versus an actual fashion brand.
Yeah. I can speak on this a little bit because I've been able to help Taco through this process. Obviously learned a lot. But yeah, the merch versus fashion thing I think is interesting because a lot of athletes are ready to put their name, or their logo on a t-shirt. And I think that like crosses into like, your individual brand identity, which anyone with an Instagram account pretty much has these days. But the merch thing, Taco was not, he mentions this. He wasn't really in favor of the merch thing because he's passionate about fashion. He said, I want to make garments. I want to do designs and make things my own. So like you can only do so much with a merch brand. But to that point, like I think like I want to dig a little bit more into merch so that way we can kind of cover that landscape of fashion. So let's say you wanted to do something more along the lines of merch. In this case, you're either doing that locally, or which if you're doing it locally, it makes it tricky to scale, especially for an athlete who doesn't like have a ton of time to handle customer service inquiries and order fulfillment, and like your focus should be on ball. So how are you going to do all of that? And to solve that problem, I think you're looking at something like drop shipping. And there's a bunch of companies who let you pick out a blank t-shirt, a pillowcase, leggings, a mug. They print it for you, they handle the shipping, everything is done for you. So what you would do is you drop your design, which you can create or have created for you within all of their printable parameters. You pick the colors, you tell us you tell your customers what sizes are available, you set the price, all those variables are handled on a little dashboard, and then after a sale they'll actually go and send you a check for the difference between what you set the price at and the cost of the goods and their services and so forth. So it's like a really turnkey way to launch a brand and not have to deal with any of the logistics. You're literally just collecting a check and designing it as your own, and they'll tell you the details up front so you know exactly how much you're going to make per unit. It's pretty smart for like that low-hanging fruit type of t-shirt.
Yeah.
But how these most athletes and entertainers take pride in quality. They don't want to just send you t-shirt cannon stuff, so that's where it gets a little bit tricky. I know one example of a platform like this I've actually used before is called Printful.
I've used them as well.
Yeah, so like you can integrate Printful to your own website so that you have your custom marketing feel, and it's presented in a way that feels on brand for you. And you could use something like Shopify for that, or wherever your e-commerce site. And obviously there's limitations to all of this stuff. So for a drop shipping direction, you can only customize the shopping experience so much. Like since you're not the one filling orders, like you gotta customize it as much as Printful will let you. Obviously customer service gets a little bit wonky. Your customer can't really return something because they don't like it. It's not like Amazon. So how does that affect your relationship with them? So you need to either eat that cost or rectify it in some way with your customer. But at the end of the day, it's a slippery slope when you start to get in the drop shipping world. So if it's important for you to have a team handle the merch route, then you kind of have to weigh your options. But I would imagine if you do have a team, that would reduce a lot of your margins because you're paying them.
Now you're paying right. Salaries or fees to a team.
That's a pretty considerable added expense for literally just t-shirts with the logo on it.
The margins are already like super tight as is when you go that route from a dropship standpoint.
Yeah, and that's why I said, like, if you do it locally, you can pay up front and get all that stuff done, but then you're sitting on inventory, which, you know, after you consider all this stuff, is it even worth it for just anything other than a branding play, you know?
Yeah.
So
I mean, we see it all the time though, Alex, like, you know, from a brand standpoint, and, you know, there's companies like, you know, Digital Merch Shop, who I have a relationship with, that work with a lot of athletes on these merch type deals. They call it brand merch, you know, because it's really tied to the athlete's brand, and it's super moment in time, if that makes sense. Like athletes will launch it around them, you know, doing something, you know, from a sports standpoint, like an accolade, like making an all-pro team or all-star team, or the launch of the season. You know, they're super moment in time, and they're super tied to the athlete's brand. So it kind of the success of the business kind of fluctuates with the, you know, the social capital of the athlete, which works, you know, which if that's the direction you want to go, it works. But, you know, there's advantages and disadvantages to both.
Right. Yeah, and you know, then you have to deal with like team shops and all of the stuff that, you know, your respective organization puts out. So it comes down to like, yeah, like you're talking about, like the community of that specific athlete, you know, what their following looks like and so forth. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers, you know, the merch versus fashion thing. Like at least covers the merch side of it. The fashion side, I think we can go, like, I can dig deeper into the fashion process. So
'cause you've been side by side with Taco in this process, right? Of bringing, of the ideation of Unloaded to, you know, the strategy and now the final execution, right?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, I feel like this episode I'm gonna be pretty heavy on the chat, but I think that'll level out. Like, you're bringing up some great points, some great questions, and like you have some better expertise in fields like real estate and stuff that I'm not as versed in. So we'll take turns episode to episode, but you know, the fashion process I think has been super interesting. But I feel like even before we go too crazy in that, let's talk about some of the business fundamentals, because you and I actually crossed paths with this, you know, the three of us going to New York and stuff. So I want to take a step before that, and start with some of the business fundamentals. Then I'll dig more into like where our paths cross, like I just mentioned, and then I'll go super heavy into the actual fashion process. So Perfect. For the business fundamentals, like, so for my company, Athlete and Us, whenever I pick up a new client, and I hate calling them clients because by the time we're doing onboarding, they're like homies. Like, the sports space is full of vultures. So I like to work with people that I have good vibes with and not like client services. But anyways, we go through this template I created called the idea dump. And this template includes 5 different frameworks that developed into like 3 major things. One is to pull an idea out of you. And then 2 is to help you understand if there's actually like true market potential there. And then the 3rd thing is to like start to train and flex your business muscles. And throughout the show, we'll refer to business muscles a lot and the reason we use that, you know, metaphor is because you can't just be great in business in one day, the same way you can't go to the gym and, you know, hit some crazy, you know, bench press.
PR.
Yeah, you gotta level up, and it takes repetitions. And
right.
That's, you know, you talk about those repetitions all the time. So those are like the 3 things that those 5 frameworks really cover. And then the idea dump itself, like, is primarily focused on kicking off a project. That's one framework. The lean canvas, that's another framework, which is like a high level business plan on, you know, just a 1 page. And then the 3rd thing is pitch deck format, where the way that this is set up is it's like the elaborated business plan, but it also helps the athlete understand how to actually present their business literally like from a communication style or a pitch style. And then the fourth thing would be the marketing toolbox to understand, your target audience, your process, the unique values that you provide, and finally like the guarantee that you offer your customer. And then the last thing that I guess blends from that previous point is the value proposition canvas. That is what it is, right? It's what's the value that you're providing. So we dig a little bit heavier into that topic, but
let me ask a question, Alex, before you get into detail. So where does going and filing for an LLC, what step is that? Because we both know that that's step one for a lot of people. The filing of documents and signing off on shit.
So I would say my answer is kind of twofold. First of all, I firmly believe in, going and protecting yourself in the matter of filing for an LLC or incorporating or whatever, like actually setting up a legal business, because otherwise you're this high net worth individual, and let's use fashion for example. You put clothes on somebody that gives them a rash and they sue you. If you don't have any like legal business protection, you're going to be liable for that with your own bank account, and they'll come for you. Right. They'll sue you into the sky. So like, that's an important step. However, I feel like every time you have an idea, you don't necessarily have to set up an LLC for it. Like if you're, got a back of the napkin idea and you're like, oh, I wonder if this can work. I think there's ways, and that's like what I was talking about with like the lean canvas, and like, let's see if we can figure this out and if there's actually like potential here, and maybe we even, get super lean and get it in front of people and receive customer feedback and, see if this is worth pursuing. At that point, or shortly after that point is when you'd really need to get serious about protecting yourself legally. Because you're kind of leaving that testing phase and into like, okay, I know I want to turn this into a business. There's something that we have here, like let's roll. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
I just kind of wanted you to talk about the importance of it. It's super important, of course, but it's not step one.
And to your point, there's other things that kind of exist beyond just that idea dump. It's like, and these things happen incrementally, because you're not just done after we finish that workshop session. There's a ton of work that goes into establishing your workflow, working and communicating with your team, understanding what your exact expenses are or what they're anticipated to be, like the whole nine. So we go through a lot of that incrementally, and some business etiquette exercises, but that just kind of happens along the way, and all of that is really just to help you get the flow of operating your business.
Gotcha.
So for Taco, let's talk about like New York. We all,
that was fun.
Yeah, we all met up in New York City. We did a variation of my idea dump thing that I was just talking about, because Taco already kind of had an idea of what he wanted to do in his head, and he was just missing those calculated steps that he needed to take in order to get there. And to his credit, like he's doing all the hard work. He's the CEO. But New York was really just meant to be building a sandbox around his business and then creating, some actionable business plan to make it happen. And we did some bonus stuff too. Like we took on, that immersion session, which we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But, for the workshop, what were your, because that was the first time that you kind of see me in my element beyond when we met at the PA, the MBPA. Yeah. So what did you think about that whole process, of the business strategizing?
I think the first thing about it was, Taco was kind of, apprehensive at first, because when you go into those situations, the workshop, you need to really get everything out on paper and kind of go from there with it. But just through our questioning and your process of getting that out, I saw really, really quickly that Unloaded wasn't his typical fashion brand. It had meaning behind it. and it wasn't your typical merch brand. It was a legitimate fashion brand, just with some of his inspirations. I think, doing a competitive analysis, being able to see who, exists in a similar lane as what Taco was envisioning, Unloaded being, you saw quickly that, hey, this has legs. This is something that is real. But no, that whole process was amazing. From day, how many days were there? 2 days total?
I was going to say, what's really interesting about what you said, with him being apprehensive at first was when I heard that out of your mouth, I was thinking about how he was when he was there. Like, you meant that as like, he was apprehensive, like, why do I need this? Like, I know what I want to do. Yeah. But when I was being there and with you, I remember him being also apprehensive about like participating. Like, we talk about the confidence thing, like, and after he shook the rust off, and he was like, okay, like, I'm getting this. I'm excited about this. Like, this is my business. I'm taking it all out of my head and onto paper and seeing how it can grow and how I'm making money and what's my brand voice and my brand tone. So he also warmed up as our time progressed in that room. And
you could see it. I mean, you could see it, like, thinking about where he was when he walked into the room, and then when we left 48 hours later, he was literally CEO Taco Charlton of Unloaded.
That's crazy.
More so, he had the fast. I want to be a designer. That's what I want to do. But I want to own this brand. But being able to be that CEO of your brand is so important. You can't hand that off. That's a task that you got to take on, because the success of your business lives and dies by you. And he really owned that.
Do you remember plastering that place? We literally had that place wallpapered with those big sticky notes. Do you remember that? So I remember, so I took them all down, and when Unloaded launches, I'm about to ruin the surprise right now, so hopefully Taco doesn't watch this. I have those sticky notes in my like garage in storage somewhere. And I want to get it. Yeah, I want to get it framed, like get one of them framed for Taco when, even if it's just something silly and he puts it in his basement and forgets about it. But I like to get creative and sentimental about those experiences, because we birthed Unloaded that day. That's when Unloaded came to be real. And so all those sticky notes had like, who's your target market? All the less sexy stuff. How are you making money? What makes you different from any other fashion brand? And Sharpied all, littered all over those big ass sticky notes. I'm gonna.
We even got super nuanced in it, and I think this is what really, got Taco going, was when we started talking about, okay, how often do you want this thing to drop? Like, and then, Taco loves this exclusivity, this one-on-ones, which he mentioned in the episode. He really got going then. But no, bro, I remember that room was painted with those damn sticky notes, those big, huge fucking sticky notes.
So yeah, that's a 30,000 foot view of what we were talking about in terms of breaking down the business. But, after that, we got increasingly more unique to the fashion space, and we started by going to see where and how business is being done. So me, you, Taco, the whole team, we visited and spoke with several large brands and investors to understand their perspectives of the industry. And I think that's a largely underrated step in any business process, because it's so easy to skip, and you have to be largely like accepting or ready to receive feedback from people when you do this type of stuff. But like, these people have already figured this shit out. So why wouldn't you want their blueprint if they're willing to share it with you? And I feel like on that like field trip immersion experience, we learned a ton during those conversations. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. No, it was eye-opening, being able to talk to leadership. And those brands were so different. I think that gave it a unique perspective as well.
Yeah, and then you fast forward to beyond the New York trip, where me and Taco started getting creative with Unloaded. And I want to highlight something here, because 9 times out of 10, this is how I get approached. everyone wants to start at the step and skip everything up until like the sexy parts, which is like, I need a logo, I need a website. Like that's where everyone thinks like that's where you're starting with business. But clearly, based on everything we've just been talking about, that's not the case. And I feel like the sexy creative part is like also super gratifying, and that's why people want to skip to that, because you get to take the stuff that you visualized and like see it in person and touch it with your own two hands. But you just cannot start here, or you will never have a North Star to your idea. And like we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of this conversation. There's definitely an expedited process to get to this point. Just learning and feeling it fast, but Taco knew what he wanted to do. So we didn't like it. The technicalities were a super important step. There was no backing off of unloaded. Like we had to figure it out one way or another. We'll discuss the super lean way of doing this in a different conversation. But anyway, so Taco finally gets to designing and producing his clothing line. And so I feel like a major question is, what do you need for that? Like for the way that Taco's trying to build this business, I think the answer is twofold. So the first thing that you're going to need is a designer. And this is super necessary for developing the technical details of your garment. This is usually organized in what's called a tech pack. He mentions that on the show. The tech pack basically tells your manufacturer how to create the garment. It is like the blueprint to your piece. So you'll go through different variations of that, and after they produce it, how does it fit on the body? What are the sizing preferences of the designer, the colors, like all the little things to get it right, stitching, like all that stuff. And you can get pretty crazy here as long as the manufacturer supports what you're trying to do. So our designer, who was referred to us by Mark Kaiser, which Mark is we talk about him on the show. He's a prominent designer that I connected Taco with before just like mentorship opportunities. And I feel like, it's all about the network, because our designer came from a referral from Mark, and her name is Tanu, the designer. She's literally a godsend. Like she is so supportive of Taco. She goes the extra mile in nearly everything. We love her. And, we got invited to her wedding. So when I'm telling you, like, we do business with family, we're only doing business with people like family. But
I got a question, Alex.
Yeah.
You're saying we a lot, and I think that's a super important point, because I kind of want to get into how you structure relationships in Athlete and Us, because it feels like you're a part of the team right now. When you say we, you know what I mean? And kind of just want to get some clarity of what that looks like.
So Taco is the CEO. He calls the shots. He does everything. He leads the ship. If Taco quits us tomorrow, it's gone. Like there is no more we. But for Athlete and Us, I kind of step in and act as like an interim COO, because like I'm just not in that vulture business sports where like I'm not an agency. So that should answer.
You don't do the work. You don't do the work for them.
No, I bring some of the brains and like of like business operations to the table, but I don't do the work for you. You got to do the work, and I'll just help us get the game plan together.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so we have the designers, the first thing, and then we have the manufacturer, which is a whole different animal. And there's no list of manufacturers in the world. You have to hunt for them. And like then I feel like if you have a brain, you're vetting them to understand the quality of their product, their previous work. Do they treat their workers well? All those variables are really important for Taco. Even like how the fabric is, like, can this be recycled? Like his fabric is made from like plant stuff. It's way over my head. And shit, like, can you even understand your manufacturer? Can you communicate with them? Like if you're doing business in China, like there's a language barrier a lot of times.
Right.
And our manufacturer, for example, is in Madrid. And while
is it just cheaper, like
yeah,
from
it's
a
cheaper, but
production standpoint?
Yeah, but there's quality differences and all kinds of stuff, and like I'll get into that, but in a minute. But like our manufacturer's in Madrid, and they're great people, but I swear there's some fishy stuff going on in this relationship. Like I feel like they find any reason to charge us for something, and that's something that athletes deal with all the time. It's like, oh, he's an athlete, he's got money, like let's ring the let's hit the register. And then there's just a ton of challenges doing business out of the country. One is like time zone for reasonable communication. Another is like Europe has like 1 million bank holidays where they will just straight up shut down for a month at a time. And then the big one is that shipping is a mother. Like quick story, like while Taco was in training camp, he shipped some of his very expensive clothes to Madrid to be used as like examples for fit, and we used FedEx to send it, which FedEx on my shit list now. Like not only did this cost $350 to ship a hoodie and some shirts overseas, but and like inside the package he had Rick Owens, Lost Days, like all kinds of designer stuff. And apparently FedEx tried delivering it a few times, and supposedly they called Taco about it because they like had trouble delivering it to our recipient, and we got no messages, no notifications of there being any issues. They just straight up destroyed his shit. It went to a warehouse, and they oh my gosh, now if Taco's really listening to this episode, he's gonna be sick remembering that, or like me bringing this up, because he was so sick. Like his favorite Rick Owens like shirt or shorts or something. Ugh. Like anyways.
That's terrible.
But like you were talking about the quality. The quality through our manufacturer has been great, but you get what you pay for. And we just feel like we could have trimmed some fat off this process and avoided a lot of shipping costs. And you know, we're definitely gonna look to stay in the US. So yeah, like after you're done with all that, then you build your website and establish your digital footprint. You know, to start promoting your product to customers. But unless you're only selling DTC, which DTC means direct to consumer, you know, you're selling through your website and you're shipping to their door through that. But like, if you want your stuff in brick and mortar, you're going to need to find wholesale accounts or retail stores to sell your clothing line. And Taco only wants to create so much product. So it's not like he's shipping out large quantities. It's rather exclusive, premium. He mentions that. So, you know, he may place his in a few high-end shops, but that doesn't just happen overnight. Like you have to prove the demand, you have to match their quality and so forth so that they'll even carry you, which basically like rounds out the fashion process. You know, you need to create demand from collection to collection, drop to drop, and you need to be creative in your marketing to build like customer loyalty and, you know, customer base in community. And that's way easier said than done. So build a team that can help you do that. And yeah, like even, you know, working with stylists in his space, like let's go find stylists to support our product and put it in the hands of who they're styling. And that's how you're going to make a name for this. So anyways, that's I feel like a good pause point for what this fashion industry looks like and what the process is to be involved in it. So what questions do you have? Or I feel like, you know, I just alluded to this, like the mentorship and building a team portion. We talk about that in the Taco's episode, and
yeah, I
literally just got done saying how important that is. Like, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, mentorship is so important in really any aspect of building any business or even investing for potential investors. You know, mentorship accelerates the learning curve. You have someone you can lean on, so you have that emotional support because that person's kind of been there, done that. In that same sense, you know, it helps them trim the fat off of the time it takes to do something. And you know, it's crazy that most people that are successful in whatever space they're in, they're always looking for a reason to find someone to mentor or to bring someone else along. So they're there. It's just about being able to find them, and you being able to bring Mark Kaiser as a mentor for Taco was amazing for him, and I know it accelerated his learning curve. And also, you know, Chad was so forthcoming with, you know, helping Taco with anything, you know. So I know he'll be, you know, in Taco's corner as well. So yeah, mentorship is everything in business. So
yeah, that's why you build a team. You stay lean. You know, they're not coming in to be a partner in your business necessarily, and you may not, depends on the mentor, but you may not hit them up every single day.
Right.
It's, you know, you gather your important experiences and learnings and questions, and then, you know, you grab coffee or treat them to a meal or whatever, and you show some love and you know, get those answers. But yeah, shout out to Mark, shout out Chad, shout out Tanu. You know,
he mentioned Tanu so many times, man. He freaking loves Tanu.
Tanu is the GOAT. Yeah, Tanu is so talented. She has her own like Instagram account in New York where she does like, you know, those like big like virtual billboard things, like when you're walking on the sidewalk in like major metro areas. She gets put on those. I think it's been multiple times now of her. She does like watercolor design and art. So she'll paint like a map of New York City and then do these like big 3D buildings coming off of like, you know, popular buildings coming off of street corners. So the Empire State Building, Tanu is based in New York.
Gotcha.
So she's just so talented. And we try to put her on whenever we can because she's just such a good heart, and super, super talented individual.
I think that brings up another point, Alex. I think, like, I mean, you just talked about how amazing she is. I think that's super important. When building out your team, you know, is having somebody who's, number one, a good person, you know, has that credibility, is accountable, and, you know, has that hustle that I know she has. I think those are.
And what the funniest part is, she's not a football person. That's not a necessity, but it is hilarious. Like, me and Taco will be talking football or what happened in the game or whatever, and Tanu's like, "Oh, I would love to go to." She's Australian. She's like, "Oh, I'd love to go to a game." Like, blah blah blah. Like, she's just so innocent. It's hilarious.
That's funny too.
But yeah, we'll plug her stuff in the bios, and you can support Tanu. Obviously, Unloaded. Go check out Unloaded. UNLD.co. We're, you know, the site right now is still private for some eyes only, but that will be launching here in the coming weeks. Finally, after Taco's really perfected how he wants to do this. So, you know, let's keep growing. Let's roll all this stuff out. I'm so excited we got to have an episode like this where we get to talk, you know, more in depth on this, the process and everything that we've been doing. So, yeah, cool. Like, until next time.
I appreciate y'all. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday for the episode. Follow us on socials if you're not already. We're posting a lot of bite-sized content there. And yeah,
let's keep rolling, man.
Have y'all in the fam. Subscribe. Peace.
Back in the game, it's evident. I step in the room, I'm an elephant. Run up a bag, I ran up a bag. I gotta go count